The cold, complex restraining apparatus held Rey upright against an angled platform in the dimly lit holding cell. Her mind stirred slowly as she regained consciousness. The disorientation was immediate. Her head ached, and the surroundings felt unfamiliar, too sterile, too quiet. At first, she thought she was alone. The other presence in the cell did not move, did not make a sound, and barely seemed to breathe. Startled, Rey took a moment to assess her surroundings, to piece together where she was, but her memory only seemed to drift further away. The last thing she remembered was the violent confrontation on Takodana, the sounds of battle ringing in her ears, the urgency of sending BB-8 away to safety, and then the sharp pain of the mind probe. The pressure of Kylo Ren's invasion into her mind was almost unbearable, the lingering ache behind her eyes a painful reminder. And then the darkness. Where am I? The thought lingered in her mind as she scanned the unfamiliar room. It felt cold, sterile, with no real point of reference. She swallowed hard and, deciding she had no choice, she finally asked,
"Where am I?"
"Does the physical location really matter so much?" came the soft voice of Kylo Ren. His tone held an unexpected gentleness, less like the hostility she had experienced on Takodana, more detached. Kylo Ren's voice was measured, cold, but laced with something deeper, something akin to curiosity. Rey's eyes flicked around the room, but she refused to give him the satisfaction of answering immediately. She had been in worse situations. She had been on her own since she was a child, learning to survive in ways he couldn't even begin to fathom. He wasn't the first person to try and intimidate her, and he wouldn't be the last. But she could feel his presence pressing on her, searching for weakness, and she wasn't going to let him find it. His voice, now barely a whisper, softened. "Who are you?" Rey didn't answer. She wouldn't. Not to him. Her mind swirled, and every fiber of her being screamed to resist. She knew this creature from her vision, this man in a mask. "You still want to kill me?" he murmured, his voice soft, filled with cold understanding. It was like he could sense the emotions boiling beneath her hardened exterior. Rey's thoughts broke through her defenses, and the words left her mouth before she could stop them, her voice sharp and filled with venom. That happens when you're being hunted by a creature in a mask. For a moment, the room fell silent. The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating. Kylo Ren's expression faltered just for a second, and Rey watched in silence, her chest tightening as she realized she had caught him off guard. The quiet lasted, and in it, she felt a strange shift in the atmosphere. And then, much to her surprise, he did not lash out in fury. Instead, he raised his hand, unclasping the mask. Rey stared at him, not knowing what to expect. Rey's breath caught in her throat. The man who stood before her revealed his face, was not the terrifying, monstrous figure she had imagined. His face was narrow, almost fragile in appearance, and yet his eyes were burning with an intensity that was both terrifying and strangely human. She couldn't look away. Kylo Ren's voice came quieter now, almost as though he were speaking to himself. "Are you just a scavenger?" She couldn't answer, not in that moment. Instead, she found herself struggling to make sense of the emotions that were rising within her. He wasn't the monster she had imagined, but that didn't make him any less dangerous. Still, she refused to speak. Rey was upset that she had been captured, and that this creature was asking her questions. In her vision, he and the horde with him had murdered men, women, and children. "I'm not going to tell you anything," she snapped, her voice hoarse with frustration. Her mind raced, but she dared not reveal anything about herself. How much had he already uncovered? The thought made her blood run cold. Kylo Ren leaned closer, his voice dropping into something darker. "I've seen what you did. You assisted a traitor. You joined with Han Solo. You've killed many." Rey remained silent, her mind closing off. His words were threats, and they struck deep. But she wouldn't let him win. She wouldn't let him manipulate her. He sighed, exasperated, and stepped back slightly. "You cannot resist me. I can take whatever I want." Rey's jaw clenched, and her gaze hardened. "Then you don't need me to tell you anything." "True," Kylo Ren replied, his voice resigned, but there was an edge to it. He stiffened as if the conversation were over, but Rey knew it wasn't. "Is that what you want?" Rey's voice broke the silence as she fought to keep the fear from creeping back in. "To just take?" Kylo Ren paused. He let the question hang in the air for a moment before answering. "I'd prefer to avoid this, but I will take what I need, one way or another." Rey felt a wave of bitterness rise in her chest, but she refused to react. She stayed silent, knowing this was far from over. She knew what she had to do. He was still searching, probing, trying to break her, but she wasn't going to let him. His hand rose slowly, as if in slow motion, and his fingers brushed her cheek. Rey flinched, but there was nowhere to move. The touch sent a jolt through her, familiar but unsettling. He hesitated, his fingers barely grazing her skin. "You're so lonely," he murmured, the words sending a shiver down her spine. His voice shifted, becoming softer. "So afraid." Rey struggled to resist, but his presence pressed into her thoughts, burrowing deeper, digging into her deepest fears.
And Han Solo, I feel like he's the father you never had. He would have disappointed you.
Her anger flared, sharper and hotter than anything she had ever felt. The fire surged through her, breaking free from all restraint. "Get out of my head," she hissed, the words like a whip. Kylo Ren leaned in closer, his power growing, pushing against her resistance. "Who are you?" he asked softly, almost coaxing. For the first time, Rey didn't flinch. She stared at him defiantly, no longer afraid, no longer intimidated. She had seen him. She had felt him. And now, it was her turn. "I'm not afraid," Rey said, her voice steady and firm. Like those on Jakku who had tried to steal from her or assault her, she was not going to be a victim. Kylo noticed a change in her face. It was no longer sad or fearful. Rey stared back at him defiantly, refusing to look away. For a long moment, neither moved. Suddenly, something shifted. A barrier, a resistance in her mind that stopped him cold. It was as if the very fabric of their connection had snapped, and for the first time, Rey felt something different, something she couldn't explain. Something had awakened in her, and as she fought Kylo Ren, his concentration intensified as he too noticed the break. Unexpectedly, Rey noticed an opening into the mind of Kylo Ren. As he tried to break through her resistance, he became vulnerable, and Rey slowly crept into his mind. She didn't force herself in. She just browsed the tangled web of his chaotic mind. There was a flood of information that crossed from his mind and into hers. Then she almost winced from the pain, until she discovered his fear. What did this intimidating creature have to fear? And she saw it.
You're afraid that you will never be as strong as Darth Vader.
At her words, Kylo Ren recoiled, his hand jerking away from her face as if she had scorched him. His mask of control shattered, and in that moment, Rey saw him for what he truly was, a frightened, conflicted boy trapped by his own demons. Confused and rattled, Kylo stumbled backward, and for the first time, he was the one unsure. He reached up, quickly donning his mask once more, as if to hide from what had just transpired. Rey stared at him, unblinking, her mind still racing with the fragments she had glimpsed inside his mind. Something had changed, not just in him, but in her too. She was no longer the frightened scavenger. She was something more. She was ready to face whatever came next. Rey closed her eyes for a moment. She remembered Maz Kanata's words. "I know the Force. It moves through and surrounds every living thing. Close your eyes. Feel it. The light. It's always been there. It will guide you." Rey's mind focused on that light. It was always there, waiting for her to reach out.
The scavenger resisted you.
She is strong with the Force. Untrained but stronger than she knows.
If what you say about this girl is true, bring her to me.
The cold steel of the restraints dug into Rey's wrists, each breath a painful reminder of her helplessness. She twisted, pulling against the tight shackles, but they held fast, unyielding. She gritted her teeth and tried again, pulling at the restraints with all her strength, but it was no use. They were solid, unwavering. She could feel the frustration boiling within her, the panic threatening to rise. "Focus," she told herself. "Focus." She couldn't let the fear control her. Closing her eyes, Rey turned inward, letting everything else fade into the background. She reached out with her mind, trying to call upon the Force, but she had no idea what she was doing. Release them, she thought, willing the restraints to give way. She concentrated harder, straining, willing the metal bindings to snap open. A sharp pain bloomed in her skull, an uncomfortable pressure pushing against her thoughts. The effort was too much. She gritted her teeth, her head pounding with the effort. The more she concentrated, the more her strength waned. She couldn't focus like this. She felt her will crumble. Frustrated, she opened her eyes, her breath shallow, her heart racing. And then, she noticed something. Movement. Her gaze shifted to the lone stormtrooper stationed in the corner of the chamber. He was pacing back and forth as if something had disturbed his thoughts. What is he doing? Rey's mind raced. He looked disoriented, distracted, as if his focus had been broken. The trooper took a few more uncertain steps, then turned abruptly toward her. Rey froze, her breath caught in her throat as his bootsteps echoed across the cold metal floor. He was moving toward her, and for a moment she thought perhaps she had been spotted, that her attempts to escape had drawn attention. But when he reached the interrogation platform, he paused, his head cocked as though listening to something only he could hear. He examined the restraints with a quiet suspicion, his gloved hands hovering near the release mechanism. Rey held her breath, wondering if he had noticed something. Did he feel something? Was it the Force? Her thoughts raced, spinning in confusion. The trooper's gloved hands hovered over the mechanism for a long, drawn-out moment. His movements were slow, deliberate, as if checking something that wasn't quite right. He leaned in, inspecting the restraints again. Rey's mind raced. The trooper was uneasy, his instincts clearly telling him something was wrong. Had the Force responded to me, she wondered? Had it answered my call? The thought struck her like a bolt of lightning. Maz Kanata's words echoed in her mind. The Force has always been with you. Rey had never truly understood the magnitude of those words until now. The strange, inexplicable moments in her life, the time she had done things she couldn't explain, began to make sense. Had it all been the Force? She had thought it was just some talent she had, some random ability, but now, in the quiet of the interrogation chamber, it clicked. The Force has always been with me. It was something she never controlled, but something that responded when she needed it. Rey closed her eyes and focused. She emptied her mind of everything except the restraints, imagining them deactivating, feeling the metal snap open in her mind, visualizing the freedom she sought. Over and over she imagined the restraints deactivating, feeling the click in her mind as if it were real. The trooper watched her closely, but Rey was no longer aware of him. She was falling into a trance, her breath steady, her body still, as she concentrated all her energy on the restraints, willing them to release her. The trooper, still standing nearby, leaned in once more, reaching for the restraints to inspect them again. Rey could feel his uncertainty. It was as though something about the restraints had unsettled him. His gloved hands hovered near the mechanism. He touched the release button, and then, with a sharp click, the restraints released. Rey's body moved, faster than she could think. With a grim expression, she turned toward the door, the weight of her newfound strength fueling her next steps. The Force had guided her, had been with her all along, and now she felt its presence.